Chancellor, Vice-Chancellor and President, members of the University Council, members of the Vice-Chancellor's Advisory Committee, staff, distinguished guests, and most importantly, the Honorary Award recipients and their guests. Good evening and welcome to this special 50th Anniversary Honorary Awards ceremony. My name is Professor Stephen Naylor and I'm the Master of Ceremonies for this evening's event. At James Cook University, we acknowledge the Australian Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders people as the traditional owners of the lands and waters where we operate our business. We pay our respects to their ancestors, elders, past, present and future. JCU is committed to honouring Australian Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders people's unique cultural, spiritual relationships to the land, waters and seas, and their rich contribution to the university and society. We are assembled here this evening to confer 24 James Cook University honorary degrees. Honorary degrees are prestigious awards conferred on individuals for distinguished contribution to community. Conferred by the University Council on the recommendation of the Vice-Chancellor and following consideration by the James Cook University's Council Awards and Ceremonies Committee, these awards honour achievements that are aligned to the university's aims and provide inspiration to members of our university community. This evening, on the final day of James Cook University's 50th anniversary year, we recognise and celebrate individuals who have made an exceptional contribution in areas such as human wellbeing and the advancement and development of the university and its communities. Chancellor, I invite you to provide some welcoming remarks.
Thank you, Stephen. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. James Cook University conducts its business on the lands and the seas of many of Australia's First Nations people. It's therefore with gratitude that I also acknowledge the traditional owners of those lands and seas, their rich cultures and their unique knowledge of our natural environment and the past, present and future contributions which Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples make to the broader fortunes of our community. It's a rare privilege to provide some welcoming remarks for this very special 50th Anniversary Honorary Doctorate Awards ceremony to recognise 24 individuals for their exceptional achievements and to confer upon them JCU honorary degrees. As you know, we'd planned to conduct this ceremony last year. However, COVID-19 disruptions put paid to that plan. We're delighted that so many of you have been able to accommodate this shift to this evening, the very last night, as you've heard, of our 50th anniversary year. It's been a momentous year as James Cook University celebrated 60 years of higher education in the North and 50 years as a university. A State Cabinet having announced in 1960 that a University College of Townsville would be established within the University of Queensland, and James Cook University having been proclaimed as Queensland's second university in 1970 to coincide with the bicentenary of James Cook's voyage to the Australian continent. Some of those being honoured tonight have been friends of my wife Chris and me for decades. Chris and I swell with pride at seeing you acknowledged tonight. Some here will remember Chris as Chris Austin, commerce student, commerce graduate, my rock and my compass now for half a century. Others of you, Chris and I have known about or admired from afar for many years, so it's with particular pride and satisfaction that I stand before you tonight as the first JCU graduate to be elected Chancellor. That's especially humbling That is especially humbling given the large body of truly outstanding graduates who have come through our university over the last 60 years, an impressive number of whom are among those being honoured tonight. JCU has played an integral part in my own life. My association with it goes back to 1968, when I arrived as a nervous first-year student. I spent 8 years studying and working at JCU from 1968 to 1975, and as well as Chris, all 4 of my siblings obtained at least 1 degree from JCU, as did one of my sisters-in-law and several of my nieces and cousins. My first full-time job, in fact, was at what was later so appropriately named the Eddie Koiki Mabo Library, after the most significant and nation-changing man whom we are also honouring posthumously tonight. Chris and I were both present on the 20th of April 1970, when Queen Elizabeth gave her royal assent to the Enabling Act of Parliament, the James Cook University of North Queensland Act 1970, on that unique and very prestigious royal occasion. Her Majesty was accompanied by her daughter, the then 19-year-old Princess Anne, and by her late husband, Prince Philip, who sadly passed away on the 9th of April, just shy of his 100th birthday. One of the proposals, in fact, for our 50th anniversary, our 50th anniversary steering committee, which I chaired, was to have royal involvement, if we could, as part of the national commemorations of the 150th anniversary of Cook's travels. That too, of course, was a casualty of COVID-19. Chris was one of the students chosen to meet the royals. As an employee, mine was the rather more humble role of usher. I did, however, get to meet Princess Anne 25 years later in 1995, when I was High Commissioner to Sri Lanka, and Her Majesty and the late Duke of Edinburgh a further decade or so later, when I was Deputy High Commissioner in London. Ladies and gentlemen, a lot has changed in the decades since our humble beginnings in 1961 as the University College of Townsville. James Cook University has played a role in many positive developments in our immediate region and across the tropics, growing to be a world leader in education and research on the tropics. We've become a vibrant, multi-campus university, a long way from the humble infant institution at which I commenced studies in 1968. Every day in this role, I'm reminded of just how much JCU is doing to achieve the vision that our far-sighted founders, many of whom we have recognised with honorary awards, in fact, had for us. As the sun sets on 19th of April 2021, it's a matter of great satisfaction that we are able tonight to celebrate this milestone and to reflect on our history by way of this honorary award ceremony. Those who will be honoured tonight have made exceptional contributions by any measure in areas such as advancing human well-being and in advancing and developing the university and its communities. Our awardees have had roles in some of the world's leading international organisations, built meaningful lives, had accomplished careers, and sought new discoveries that have made a significant local, regional, national, and international impact. It is a delight for Chris and me to catch up with old acquaintances and to meet other outstanding individuals whom we've known and respected by reputation only until tonight. We look forward to catching up and meeting more of you this evening as we celebrate the final hours of JCU's 50th year and look back with deserved pride on our people, our place in Australia, in Singapore, and in the broader tropics, and on the impact JCU has had within its communities. I think it's important also to look forward to contributing to our solemn duty to create a brighter future for life in the tropics worldwide by producing graduates and making discoveries that make a difference. As the Chancellor of this exceptional institution, I'm committed to ensuring that the legacy of all those we honour as honorary doctors of our university endures into the future.
James Cook University wishes to recognise Ms Valerie Alberts for her outstanding service and many distinguished public contributions to supporting the advancement of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities in northern Queensland. As a direct descendant of the Kudjala traditional people from the Charterstown region, Ms Valerie Alberts is a traditional owner of the land and a highly respected Indigenous elder. Ms Alberts has a sustained track record of distinguished public contributions to northern Queensland communities. Her record of outstanding service traverses a broad range of domains including education, health, land rights, mining activities, cross-cultural community relations, town council operations, and progress towards genuine reconciliation. For more than 40 years, Ms Alberts has held a number of influential professional and service roles aimed at supporting the advancement of Indigenous communities in northern Queensland and giving life to reconciliation between Indigenous and non-Indigenous Australians. In parallel with her professional activities, Ms Alberts has offered outstanding service through a huge volume of influential, unremunerated work and is recognised as the guiding hand in starting several organisations that supported Indigenous advancement. In recognition of her outstanding service, Ms Valerie Alberts will be recognised as an Honorary Doctor of Letters. James Cook University wishes to recognise Professor Tony Bassick for his academic excellence and outstanding leadership in fostering, developing and delivering innovation, particularly in the fields of agriculture, food and complex carbohydrate biotechnology at national and international levels. Professor Tony Bassick is an internationally recognised leader of multidisciplinary teams focusing on both basic and strategic plant biotechnology research. His research has assisted primary producers and manufacturers to use the latest technologies to optimise production and to help train the specialised workforce needed to underpin Australia's contemporary agricultural industries, both tropical and temperate. Since 2018, Professor Bassick has been Professor of Plant Biology in the Department of Animal, Plant and Soil Science at La Trobe University. He was appointed Director of the La Trobe Institute for Agriculture and Food, and the establishment of which he championed, and is now also Director of the $24 million La Trobe-led Australian Research Council Industry Transformation Research Hub for Medicinal Agriculture. Professor Bassick graduated from JCU with a Bachelor of Science in 1975 and a Bachelor of Science with Honours Class 1 in 1976. He was appointed a Fellow of the Australian Academy of Science and recognised as a JCU Outstanding Alumnus. In light of his exceptional contribution, Professor Tony Bassick will be recognised as an Honorary Doctor of Science. James Cook University wishes to recognise Mr Laurie Bragg for his significant contribution to scholarship and education, in particular the history of relations between Australia and Papua New Guinea. Mr Laurie Bragg served the Australian and Papua New Guinean governments from 1961 to 1978. He worked in 7 of Papua New Guinea's 20 provinces, starting at the rank of Cadet Patrol Officer and being promoted to Assistant District Commissioner in recognition of his contribution to Australian administration of the then territory of Papua New Guinea. During his service, he developed a deep understanding of PNG cultures, including customary land management and conflict resolution. Mr Bragg recently donated his outstanding collection to JCU, comprising his oral history archives, documents, entire PNG library, a collection of about 3,000 digitised photographs, as well as approximately 900 artefacts, which contain a number of outstanding examples of PNG art. The Bragg collection documents important aspects of PNG Australian history and is therefore a significant asset forging closer links between PNG and JCU. The collection is an invaluable addition to the research and teaching infrastructure of JCU and is expected to generate numerous research projects aligned with the university's tropical agenda. In light of his significant contributions, Mr. Laurie Bragg will be recognised as an Honorary Doctor of Letters. James Cook University wishes to recognise Commissioner Katarina Carroll, APM, for her exceptional leadership and professionalism in a number of key roles in the service of the state of Queensland. Commissioner Katarina Carroll is currently Commissioner of the Queensland Police Service. She was formerly the Commissioner of the Queensland Fire and Emergency Services from August 2015 until July 2019. In 2008, Commissioner Carroll was appointed the first female superintendent to the North Queensland region, and what followed have been a wide variety of senior roles, including overseeing security at the G20 meeting in Brisbane in 2014. Commissioner Carroll graduated from James Cook University in 1983 with an Associate Diploma in Community Welfare and holds several other tertiary qualifications, including Executive Masters in Public Administration, a degree in Criminology, and a Graduate Diploma in Applied Management. Commissioner Carroll has been the recipient of the Sir Vincent Fairfax Scholarship in Ethical Leadership and the Sir James Wolfenson Public Service Scholarship to study at the prestigious Kennedy Business School at Harvard University. In 2015, she was a recipient of a James Cook University Outstanding Alumni Award. Commissioner Carroll is also the recipient of many international, national and state awards, including winner of the Government and Academia category of the 2015 Telstra Business Women's Awards. In light of her exceptional leadership, Commissioner Katarina Carroll will be recognised as an Honorary Doctor of Letters. James Cook University wishes to recognise Emeritus Professor Peter Caldrake, AO, for his exceptional and distinguished public contribution to higher education in Australia, to Northern Queensland and to James Cook University, especially through his lifetime of work, advocacy and advancement of higher education. Emeritus Professor Caldrake has a distinguished record of service in higher education. A dual Fulbright scholar, Emeritus Professor Caldrake was Vice-Chancellor of Queensland University of Technology from 2003 to 2017 and has made a significant contribution through his scholarly and professional leadership on higher education policy and practice and his involvement in national higher education bodies, including as chair of the peak body, Universities Australia. Emeritus Professor Peter Caldrake received a James Cook University Outstanding Alumni Award in 2010. In 2011, he was appointed an Officer in the Order of Australia for distinguished service to higher education. Emeritus Professor Peter Caldrake was awarded the 2016 Asia Pacific Leadership Award by the Council of Advancement and Support of Education and proclaimed a Queensland Great in June 2017. In March 2021, Emeritus Professor Caldrake took up his appointment as Chief Commissioner of the Tertiary Education Quality and Standards Agency, Australia's higher education regulator. In recognition of his distinguished public contributions, Emeritus Professor Peter Caldrake will be recognised as an Honorary Doctor of the University. James Cook University wishes to recognise Mr. Sean Dorney, MBE, AM, for his outstanding contribution as a Foreign Affairs reporter to Australia and his advocacy for Pacific nations, particularly Papua New Guinea. Mr. Dorney has been nationally and internationally recognised for his contribution to foreign affairs reporting to Australia and has continued to ensure that Australians are well informed of political issues in PNG and the South Pacific over 4 decades. He was recognised in 2018 as an Australian Institute of International Affairs Fellow for his exceptional contributions to Australia's international relations. He is an advocate for the ways in which Australia can best work with and assist our tropical Pacific neighbours, and his passion is reflected in the many issues he has highlighted over many years as part of his professional practice and in keeping with his personal commitment. Mr. Dorney was made a member of the Order of the British Empire in 1990 by the PNG government for his reporting on the Sand Line affair. The Australian government recognised Mr. Dorney as a member of the Order of Australia in 2000 for service to journalism as a foreign correspondent. In 2019, the government of PNG recognised Mr. Dorney as a companion of the Star of Melanesia. In light of his outstanding contributions, Mr. Sean Dorney will be recognised as an Honorary Doctor of Letters. James Cook University wishes to recognise Mr. Graham Jackson, OAM, for his outstanding contribution to business and commerce and his enduring public contributions to community culture and sporting organisations in Townsville and North Queensland. Mr. Graham Jackson is a successful Queensland businessman, founder of Loloma Jewellers, former Townsville Enterprise Limited chairman, and an elder statesman of the North Queensland business community. Trained as an accountant, but motivated to discover new opportunities and to help other businesses to succeed, Mr. Jackson has contributed significantly to the Townsville business community, the jewellery industry, service clubs, and the sporting and cultural fabric of the entire region. In 2011, Mr. Jackson was honoured as a Queensland Great by the then Premier of Queensland, the Honourable Anna Bligh, who noted his contributions and described him as having one of the best business brains in the country. In 2002, Dr. Jackson was awarded a Medal of the Order of Australia for his service to the community, in particular the prominent roles he played on more than a dozen social welfare, service, sporting and health organisations. Furthermore, in 1987, Mr. Jackson was given the task of selecting and commissioning the silversmith to produce the James Cook University mace. In light of his outstanding contribution, Mr. Graham Jackson will be recognised as an Honorary Doctor of Commerce. And I might point out that the mace, you can have a look at the mace at the back of the room there. The last recipient in this set. James Cook University wishes to recognise Dr. Dennis Lennox for his significant contribution to medicine and health education, training and service delivery in Northern Queensland. Dr. Dennis Lennox has rendered exceptional service to the Northern Queensland community through his outstanding leadership in establishing the Queensland Rural Generalist Pathway and his passionate advocacy for rural and remote practice and education. In the mid-2000s, following renewed state and national attention on workforce shortages, Dr. Lennox first proposed and led the development of rural generalism as a distinct medical specialty in Queensland, and then pioneered the development of the Queensland Rural Generalist Pathway. Working in close collaboration with many JCU staff, Dr. Lennox worked tirelessly to provide high-quality, fit-for-purpose, recognised training pathways for rural generalists, providing a much-needed avenue for postgraduate training and employment for JCUs and other universities' medical graduates. The Queensland Rural Generalist Pathway is now the logical destination for many JCU medical graduates who make up the largest proportion of doctors on this pathway. The influence of the Queensland Rural Generalist Pathway model can also be seen in other professions such as the Queensland Health Allied Health Rural Generalist Pathway and has been adopted internationally in a number of countries as a workforce model to meet the needs of underserved communities. In light of his significant contributions, Dr. Dennis Lennox will be recognised as an Honorary Doctor of Medicine.
I would like to invite our Chief of Staff, Vanessa Cannon, to the stage to launch the James Cook University History publication, The University for the North. Vanessa.
Thank you very much, Professor Naylor. Distinguished guests, I am delighted to join you this evening for the launch of JCU's 50th anniversary commemorative book, A University for the North by Tricia Fielding. Case in point. Many of you will know that on JCU's 40th anniversary, an independent history titled Our Place in the Sun, authored by Dr. Peter Bell, was launched. This history related the timeline of events leading up to the establishment of the University College of Townsville in 1960, and our growth and development through to 2010. 40 years of university, 50 years of higher education in northern Queensland. A record written by an outside observer. For our 50th celebrations, the commemorative book envisaged by the Anniversary Steering Committee was to be something different. We wanted something more personal, something inspirational, and something that captured why JCU was such an important part of the fabric of Townsville and northern Queensland, a university for the North. We didn't want a book that started at chapter 1, ended in 200 pages later after a timeline of events, but rather something that you could pick up and enter anywhere and capture in brief moments. The people of the North, the sense of place that so grounds us, the knowledge created in those two contexts, and the enduring legacy that a university provides. So given this, choosing the author was made much easier in our view. So we went to one of our own. Tricia Fielding is a professional historian and writer whose published works include the books Neither Mischievous Nor Meddlesome, The Remarkable Lives of North Queensland's Independent Midwives, 1890 to 1940, Queen City of the North, A History of Townsville, and the history blogs, North Queensland History and Women of the North. She has written more than 120 historical articles for the Townsville Bulletin and has presented guest lectures, talks and workshops for the State Library of Queensland, Museum of Tropical Queensland, JCU, City Libraries and Queensland Writers Centre. In 2015, Tricia was awarded the John Oxley Library Award in recognition of her ongoing contribution to sharing the history of North Queensland through her blogs and other published works. I knew Tricia from the series of historical articles she had written for the JCU Library as a component of the T150, Townsville's Past and Present project, and was published in the Townsville Bulletin as well. Most recently, Tricia contributed 9 written works for the library's landmark exhibition, 50 Treasures, celebrating 50 years of James Cook University in 2020. Her latest project is researching and documenting Art Deco and interwar modern buildings in North Queensland. Tricia is also a member of staff and is currently acting manager of special collections in the Eddie Koiki-Mabo Library. So while she looked a bit askance at me when I let her know what we envisaged for the commemorative book, I can quite happily say that Tricia has met the challenge tremendously. This collection of stories highlights significant people and events that have shaped JCU, but also demonstrate how the university has had an impact on individuals and the region too. Born here in Townsville, JCU is in and for the region, an integral part of northern Queensland, and now grown well beyond our traditional home into Singapore and the tropics more broadly, like many of our graduates, in fact. The 2018 JCU Economic Impact and Human Capital Report sought to measure the full impact of JCU's contribution in economic and human capital terms, and as an important catalyst for growth, economic activity, and wellbeing in regional areas. The total human capital impact of JCU's 2016 graduates, for example, was estimated to be $1.75 billion. What can't necessarily be quantified is the opportunity and experiences that a university education provides. The stories in this commemorative book, some told by a diverse group of our graduates, provide evidence of both promise and potency realised. Tricia tells me that everyone interviewed gave generously of their time and without hesitation, for which she is grateful. At the culmination of JCU's 50th anniversary year, and through this excellent publication, we can be reminded of James Cook University's people, place, knowledge and legacy, such as George Roberts, Eddie Koiki Mabo, Professor Joe Baker, Professor Colin Roderick, and Lieutenant General John Gray, to name a few. The Cyclone Testing Station, establishment of the medical school, expansion to Cairns and Singapore, and more recently, the State of the Tropics Project. Ladies and gentlemen, I commend the book to you and congratulate our author, Tricia Fielding, for her terrific work in doing justice to the university and its history. And with those few words, it is my great pleasure to launch JCU's commemorative book, A University for the North, and ask Tricia to speak a little more about the publication. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and distinguished guests. Thank you very much, Vanessa. I was commissioned in early 2019 to write a commemorative volume that would celebrate the 50th anniversary of JCU's establishment as a fully fledged university. The brief was to write a collection of 50 stories within the framework of 4 themes: people, place, knowledge and legacy. That is to say, what I wrote would need to acknowledge JCU's people, the significance of its place in regional northern Queensland and the tropics, the knowledge that had been shared and co-created over those years, and the enduring legacy after 50 years as a university. Importantly, this was not to simply be a history, but something rather more diverse. And therein lay the challenge. Because I am a historian, but I'm first and foremost a writer, so I was up for that challenge. But where do you start? So I decided to aim to write 25 biographical style articles on alumni and 25 articles on the development and growth of the university and its resulting legacy of research. It was a challenge to choose just 25 people out of more than 76,000 graduates. So that was a big challenge. Now, I contacted 25 people via email to ask if they would like to be a part of the university's 50th celebrations, but I was fairly cagey at the beginning about what would actually happen with those interviews. But I'm very pleased to say not one single person said no. There was not a negative feeling in the room, basically. And I ended up with 20 written bios. I was able to write 20 biographies. One person dropped out at the end, so basically there are 19 what I would consider full bios in the book. And there are also other people, some of those people Vanessa has already mentioned, there are other people featured in the general stories throughout the book as well. The book took me 12 months to research and write, and I do have to say that it was a genuinely challenging deadline to write that in 12 months. And shortly after the manuscript was actually submitted to the publishers, the COVID-19 pandemic was declared. So that really threw up a few roadblocks and has delayed the publication by a year. But we're here, and as I said to Vanessa earlier, it's a real book. So the reason that I mention the pandemic is that what you won't find in the book is any mention of the pandemic whatsoever, because the manuscript was completed before the pandemic was even mentioned in our everyday lives. What you will find are some truly extraordinary people who've done some truly extraordinary things. And there are stories about the university's contribution to the cultural life of the region too, from its involvement in the establishment of the Australian Festival of Chamber Music to the establishment of the Foundation of Australian Literary Studies. There are quite a lot more. Vanessa's already mentioned those things. Also, the university is custodian of a very beautiful art collection. And so that's another thing that's mentioned that I've talked about in the book as well. And Vanessa's talked about some of the other, that's okay, that's all. Talked about some of those other things that are in the book as well. So it's quite a diverse book. And of course, there are many thank yous I'd like to make, but I'm conscious this is not an Oscars speech, so I'll try to be quick. Thank you very much to James Cook University for the opportunity to actually write this book, because it's been a genuine privilege. Vanessa, thank you very much for the trust that you placed in me, that the belief you had that I could just produce this book for you.
No.
Yeah, thank you very much, Vanessa. And to Professor Sandra Harding, of course, the Vice-Chancellor, and staff from the Vice-Chancellor's office, particularly Chiara, who I've had some contact with in this last week. And our Chancellor, Mr. Bill Twaddell, who took a genuine interest from the very beginning and was so very encouraging to me and helpful to me from the very beginning and all throughout as well. And thank you very much, Bill. I really appreciate that. From the Advancement Directorate, Tony Lawrence, Damien Watson and Jack Groden. From Corporate Records, Giselle Bovink, Joyce Kuhn, and colleagues in the Library Special Collections team, most particularly Bronwyn McBurney, Manager of Special Collections, and also Helen Hooper, Director of Library and Information Services. Many, many thanks are due to both Bronwyn and Helen for their support and, most of all, patience during this project. To Heather and the team at Bounce Books, the publishers, although their name has changed to Hyphen, I think, these days, yeah. Also to my family, who are over in the corner. My husband and my two daughters were a great support to me during the writing of this book, so I thank them very much for that. And my husband is the only one other person in the room who knows the real challenge, the true challenge that this book was for me. So I thank you for your support, Murray. And a big thank you to the people that I interviewed for the book, who all showed such a generosity of spirit. And it was genuinely heartening to deal with those people. And I thank them for giving me their time and, most importantly, for their openness, because they were very open. I did ask them some probing questions, which you'll find quite fascinating, actually. I see that in the room tonight, there are a few of those people that I did actually write profiles on. Commissioner Katarina Carroll, it's good to see you here tonight, and congratulations on your award. Emeritus Professor Peter Caldrake, I'm not sure where Peter is sitting, but... and also Mr. William Bill Mitchell. So thank you very much, all of you, for being so generous with me and with your time. Something that I've learned only in recent years is that what drives me as a writer is that I know now that I want my writing to move people to feel something, whether that's pride or joy or sadness or empathy. I really just want to move my readers. I set out to write a book that would illustrate the true heart of this university, to make it seem like a living entity rather than a hollow institution, something that's continually growing and evolving to fit the needs of the communities that it actually serves. I hope I've done it justice, and because there's something very special about JCU, about its place and about its people, something very special indeed. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Tricia. And please, there are copies of Our Place in the Sun and the new commemorative work at the back of the room. Do take a copy of each when you leave this evening. Thank you.
It gives me great pleasure to present the next 8 Honorary Doctorate Award recipients. And again, I'd ask that the recipients please stand in your place as I read your citation. James Cook University wishes to recognise Mr. Bill Mitchell, OAM, for his significant contribution to human rights law and his commitment to the community of Northern Queensland. Mr. Bill Mitchell is recognised as a leading Australian human rights lawyer and advocate. His work in human rights and discrimination law, coronial law, institutional abuse, migration law, social protection, disaster legal response and older persons human rights law has influenced law reform, legal policy and legislative change at local, state, national and international levels. Mr. Mitchell has appeared at the United Nations Open-Ended Working Group on Ageing, making more than 20 interventions over 9 years. He has given keynote addresses at national and international forums and provided numerous submissions to government and law reform bodies on human rights law reform. Mr. Mitchell has been instrumental in encouraging other community legal centres in Northern Queensland to join the clinical legal education program at James Cook University, expanding opportunities for law students to engage in pro bono work and providing access to justice for the communities of Northern Queensland. This program, one of the first of its kind in regional Australia, has seen over 360 law students provide advice to almost 7,000 Townsville community law clients in its 25 years of operation. Awarded life membership of the Townsville District Law Association in 2018, Mr. Mitchell is an outstanding example of how a life dedicated to working locally can have a positive impact for local people, but with national and international reach. In light of his significant contributions, Mr. Bill Mitchell will be recognised as an Honorary Doctor of Laws. James Cook University wishes to recognise Mr. Darryl Murger for his outstanding contributions to the documentation of cultural heritage in far north Queensland, to education in cultural heritage and to the establishment of Indigenous enterprises. Mr. Darryl Murger is a Goonganji elder from Yarrabah. He is a senior author on numerous cultural heritage field assessment reports, many of which were conducted during construction of the Peninsula Development Road project. Mr. Murger has also been engaged by Queensland Parks and Wildlife Service to provide cultural heritage training for national park rangers and stakeholders in Coen, Cooktown, Lakefield, Lockhart River and Port Stewart, and has recently contributed to the Master Reef Guide Field School program on Fitzroy Island. His contributions to cultural heritage conservation and education were recognised when he received the Queensland Parks and Wildlife Centenary of National Parks Award in 2008 and the Far North Queensland Tourism Award for Deerall Aboriginal Corporation in 1995. Mr. Murger has also contributed in a significant way to international understanding of Indigenous Australian cultures. In 1988, he developed cultural heritage displays for the Australia Pavilion at Brisbane's World Expo and conducted acknowledgements of country and archaeological presentations during the exposition. Since then, he has represented Australia in international forums such as the Pacific Islands World Heritage Workshop and given presentations on cultural heritage to numerous international students visiting Australia. In light of his outstanding contributions, Mr. Darryl Murger will be recognised as an Honorary Doctor of Letters. James Cook University wishes to recognise Professor Dennis Passion for his exceptional contribution to advancing rural and remote health in Australia. Professor Dennis Passion has dedicated his career to rural and remote health education, which has greatly enhanced the capacity and capability of the health workforce in northwestern Queensland, in particular in his role as the inaugural director of the Mount Isa Centre for Rural and Remote Health, Professor Passion established extensive relationships with local health providers, government agencies and communities, establishing the centre as an integral part of the Mount Isa community and significantly enhancing the capacity, capability and national profile of the rural and remote health workforce in northwestern Queensland. Although the nominal aim of the centre was to address the shortage of health practitioners within rural and remote Australia, Professor Passion always strived towards the broader goal of building intellectual capital in the bush. The extraordinary team which he built at the centre has been incredibly successful in developing a community of health knowledge and expertise and is a powerful advocate for rural health needs on the national stage. Today, the centre at the recently named Murdapunni campus of JCU in Mount Isa is a nationally recognised leader in rural and remote health professional education, training and research, with over 30 staff in education, research, administration and IT spread across northwest Queensland. The success of the centre and its sustainability is testimony to Professor Passion's pioneering work and dedication. In light of his exceptional contribution, Professor Dennis Passion will be recognised as an Honorary Doctor of Medicine. James Cook University wishes to recognise Dr. Len Rutledge for his significant contributions to the tourism industry as a pioneering and internationally respected travel writer and publisher. Dr. Len Rutledge graduated from James Cook University in 2003 with a Doctor of Philosophy in Tourism and is one of Australia's most respected travel writers. His articles and books have been published worldwide, and his background and experience in the travel and tourism industry are highly respected. Outside of travel writing, Dr. Rutledge has also been the director of a number of tourism operations across Australia and started his own newspaper in Cairns and several publications in Townsville. Throughout a 50-year career, Dr. Rutledge has been a pioneer of travel writing, and his narratives have inspired innumerable Northern Queenslanders and others to travel the world over. In addition to his PhD in tourism, Dr. Rutledge also has qualifications in engineering, economics and regional planning. Dr. Rutledge was awarded honorary membership of the Australian Society of Travel Writers in 2000 and life membership in 2020, awarded a Pacific Asia Travel Gold Award for travel writing in 1988, and received an Association of Southeast Asian Nations Tourism Association Writing Award in 2010. He was inducted into the IGO UGO Hall of Fame in 2003 and was a finalist in Travelocity International Travel Writer of the Year in 2009. In light of his significant contributions, Dr. Len Rutledge will be recognised as an Honorary Doctor of Letters. James Cook University wishes to recognise Mr. Bernard Luke Singleton for his outstanding service and distinguished public contribution to the Northern Queensland community, particularly in the fields of health, archaeology and anthropology. Mr. Singleton has over 30 years of professional experience in the health sector, including Queensland Health, Punipina Cape York Health Council and various Queensland agencies responsible for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander affairs, as well as 16 years professional experience in Aboriginal traditional owner community affairs. Mr. Singleton has been a familiar face in the JCU community for many years. He has performed the Welcome to Country at many prominent JCU events and led numerous traditional knowledge and practice workshops and training activities for JCU anthropology and archaeology students. In addition, Mr. Singleton has served as a mentor for many young leaders who regularly engage with JCU, especially within the Centre for Tropical Environmental and Sustainability Science. Mr. Singleton also made an exceptional contribution towards archaeology and anthropology through his position with the Department of Aboriginal and Islander Advancement. Mr Singleton has been widely recognised for his achievements, including through his induction into the Queensland Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Council Hall of Fame and having the Arpoonapina Cape York Health Council's Bernie Singleton Scholarship Fund named in his honour. In light of his outstanding service, Mr Bernie Singleton will be recognised as an Honorary Doctor of Letters. James Cook University wishes to recognise Mr Victor Stephenson for his outstanding public contribution to the field of science in the Northern Queensland community, Australia and abroad, by virtue of his knowledge, mentoring and teaching of conservation and natural resource management and ecology, in particular cultural burning practices. Mr Victor Stephenson is a descendant of the Tuckalaka people from the Gulf country of Northern Queensland. He was taught cultural burning by the late Doctors George Musgrave and Tommy George, both James Cook University honorary doctors, who played an integral role in recording and transcribing sessions with the elders as part of the Kuku Taipan Traditional Knowledge Recording Project, which began in 2001. The project demonstrated how inherited traditional knowledge systems can aid planning and resource development, ecology, conservation and managing natural resources. Through his outstanding mentoring and leadership for nearly 30 years, as well as on-the-ground training with Aboriginal communities and both Indigenous and non-Indigenous Australians, Mr Stephenson has continued to teach Indigenous cultural burning practices and share his knowledge with the rest of the world. Cultural burning is now in high demand across Australia and abroad as communities look for better ways to protect or enhance fire-dependent habitats, to manage natural resources and to deal with future fires and climate change. Conservation organisations are also using his techniques to protect or enhance fire-dependent habitats. In light of his outstanding public contribution, Mr Victor Stephenson will be recognised as an Honorary Doctor of Science. James Cook University wishes to recognise Ms Judith Trevin Hawke for her significant contribution to enhancing the capacity and capability of the allied health workforce, particularly occupational therapy, in Northern Queensland. As Associate Professor and Foundation Head of the Department of Occupational Therapy at James Cook University, Judith Trevin Hawke provided outstanding leadership and service to the development of occupational therapy at JCU and to the broader occupational therapy profession in Northern Queensland. With no existing occupational therapy presence at JCU, Ms Trevin Hawke was responsible for the development of a sustainable and locally relevant occupational therapy program for JCU. This included recruitment of teaching staff, development of curricula, obtaining accreditation from relevant bodies, and liaising with public and private occupational therapy providers to secure appropriate clinical placements for JCU students. In 1998, less than a year after her commencement at JCU, the university launched its Bachelor of Occupational Therapy with the first cohort of 43 graduates receiving their qualification in 2002. In 2001, the Occupational Therapy Honours Program was introduced. Ms Trevin Hawke's outstanding leadership has provided a strong foundation for JCU's continued excellence in regional, rural and remote health education. Judith has also published widely and presented at many state, national and international conferences. In recognition of her outstanding service to the occupational therapy profession in Queensland, in 1994 she was awarded the Mary Rankine Wilson Memorial Award, the foremost award made by Occupational Therapy Australia Queensland Division. In light of her significant contribution, Ms Judith Trevin Hawke will be recognised as an Honorary Doctor of Science. James Cook University wishes to recognise Professor Ian Young, AO, for his outstanding scholarship as a researcher and engineer, and for his pioneering leadership roles in online teaching and research education and the internationalisation of the Australian higher education sector. Professor Ian Young is a prominent Australian academic and former Vice-Chancellor of Swinburne University and the Australian National University. Over his long career, Professor Young has been a superb ambassador of James Cook University, exemplifying the quality of its learning and teaching programs and approach to research education. He graduated with first-class honours in engineering from JCU in 1979, receiving the highly prestigious C.N. Barton Medal, testament to his outstanding work as a student. In 2010, Professor Young was recognised with the James Cook University Outstanding Alumni Award. Professor Young has worked tirelessly to expand higher education by opening it up to globalised opportunities through internationalisation and by playing a pioneering role in expanding educational opportunities through online education. His myriad achievements have been recognised through numerous awards and honours, including as an Honorary Fellow of Engineers Australia, a Fellow of the Academy of Technological Sciences and Engineering, the Centenary Medal in recognition of his services to research in 2000, and he became an officer in the General Division of the Order of Australia in 2012 for his services to higher education and research. In light of his outstanding scholarship as a researcher and engineer and his pioneering leadership in higher education, Professor Young will be recognised as an Honorary Doctor of Engineering honoris causa. It gives me great pleasure to present the final 8 Honorary Doctorate recipients. The first 4 are presented in absentia, so I will share that information with you, but there isn't anybody here to recognise those people. However, I think it's very important as a university that nevertheless we provide their details for you in absentia. The final 4 recipients will be receiving their awards posthumously, and therefore there are representatives of those recipients in the room, and again I invite those recipients who are going to be accepting an award on behalf of the awardee, please feel free to stand while I read the citation if you wish. James Cook University wishes to recognise Her Excellency Gillian Bird, PSM, for her exceptional contribution to international relations and particularly her advocacy for the recognition by the United Nations of the International Day of the Tropics. Her Excellency is currently in Paris, serving as Australia's ambassador to France, and is not able to attend tonight's ceremony, so the University will recognise her achievements in absentia. Her Excellency Gillian Bird is a career diplomat and has worked for the Australian Government's Department of Foreign Affairs for almost 40 years. After serving in a number of high-level positions, including in the Department of Prime Minister and Cabinet, Ms Bird was appointed as Australia's first ambassador to the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, ASEAN, in 2008. In 2014, she was appointed Ambassador and Permanent Representative of Australia to the United Nations. It was in this role that she worked closely with James Cook University to campaign for the United Nations to recognise an International Day of the Tropics, to be celebrated each year on the 29th of June, a date which recognises the launch of the inaugural State of the Tropics report in 2014. Ms Bird's leadership, lobbying, engagement and passionate support for this campaign were brought to bear in bringing 74 nations together with Australia to co-sponsor the UN resolution in support of an International Day. That resolution was passed by the UN General Assembly without dissent. In light of her exceptional contribution, Her Excellency Gillian Bird will be recognised as an Honorary Doctor of the University. James Cook University wishes to recognise Dr. Richard Harris, SC, OAM, for his globally recognised expertise and continued commitment to aeromedical and emergency retrieval, and his outstanding service to the Australian and international communities with respect to emergency medical retrieval services. Dr. Harris is not able to attend tonight's ceremony due to other commitments, so the University will recognise his achievements in absentia. In June 2018, Dr. Richard Harris gained international attention for his critical role in the successful rescue of 12 boys, all members of a junior soccer team, and their coach from a cave in Chiang Rai Province, Thailand. Known throughout the diving community for his unrivalled expertise in diving and medical retrieval, British divers participating in the rescue mission contacted Dr. Harris for his assistance. Working with the rescue team, Dr. Harris developed a plan to extricate the team and their coach from the cave, which involved anaesthetising the boys and their removal from the cave along a pitch-black and very complicated tunnel. On the 24th of July 2018, Dr. Harris was awarded the Australian Star of Courage for his unwavering and selfless bravery in the successful rescue, and the Medal of the Order of Australia for service to the international community. On Australia Day 2019, Dr. Harris was announced as the joint 2019 Australian of the Year with his dive partner, Dr. Craig Challen, SC OAM. Dr. Harris's role in the rescue garnered significant international and national media attention, and in particular highlighted Dr. Harris's postgraduate education in Northern Queensland through James Cook University and our region's collective expertise in remote health and medical retrieval. In light of his globally recognised expertise, Dr. Richard Harris will be recognised as an Honorary Doctor of Medicine. James Cook University wishes to recognise Dr. Peter Eisdale, AM, for his significant contributions to reef science and outstanding leadership in the effective commercialisation of science in Australia. Dr. Eisdale is not able to attend tonight's ceremony, so once again the University wishes to recognise his achievements in absentia. Dr. Peter Eisdale is a successful, innovative reef scientist and entrepreneur who has made important contributions to the understanding of long-term climate records trapped in massive corals and early computer-based methods of analysis. Dr. Eisdale ended his full-time executive career in 2013 as the International General Manager of Research and Innovation at the country's largest waste and recycling corporation, Trans-Pacific. Now retired to a world of select consulting, governance and advisory services to industry and researchers, he continues to help bring innovation, entrepreneurship, good governance and commercial sustenance to the circular economy for those who are now building the foundations of those enterprises. Dr. Peter Eisdale received his PhD in marine science from James Cook University in 1982, and in 2010 he was honoured with the JCU Outstanding Alumni Award. He was appointed a member of the Order of Australia in 2006 for services to marine science through research and as a contributor to the development and commercialisation of biotechnology. In light of his outstanding contributions, Dr. Peter Eisdale will be recognised as an Honorary Doctor of Science. James Cook University wishes to recognise Emeritus Professor David Yellowlees for his outstanding service and distinguished contribution to James Cook University and to the Northern Queensland community as a researcher, teacher and mentor. Emeritus Professor Yellowlees is not able to attend tonight's ceremony due to other commitments, so the University wishes to recognise his achievements in absentia. Emeritus Professor David Yellowlees is an eminent researcher in the biochemistry of coral reef organisms, publishing over 50 original peer-reviewed journal articles on that topic alone. Emeritus Professor Yellowlees joined JCU in 1971 and has an exceptional and distinguished history of service and leadership to the university as a lecturer, researcher, supervisor, academic leader, mentor and member of the University Council. One of Emeritus Professor Yellowlee's most substantive roles was as Assistant Director of the Australian Research Council Centre of Excellence for Coral Reef Studies, a role he held from 2007 until his retirement in 2016. Emeritus Professor Yellowlees was also chair of the organising committee of the 12th International Coral Reef Symposium, which the ARC Centre and JCU co-hosted in 2012 in Cairns. This highly successful major event cemented the ARC Centre's reputation in coral reef research leadership. In 2008, Emeritus Professor Yellowlees was presented with the Vice-Chancellor's inaugural Dugong Award, which recognises senior staff who have made a difference in university leadership and management above and beyond the call of duty. For his outstanding service, Professor Yellowlees will be presented with the award of Honorary Doctor of Science. I now move on to 4 posthumous awards. James Cook University wishes to recognise the late Mr. James Birrell for his outstanding legacy to James Cook University in developing the University for North Queensland Master Plan, assisting with choosing the site for the proposed campus, and for creating the architectural design of significant buildings, including the Eddie Koiki Mabo Library, Kenback Chancellery Building, and the University Halls of Residence. This award will be received by his son, James Birrell Jr. Mr. Birrell designed the first academic building on the university's Bebegoo Yamba Townsville campus. He was also appointed lead architect for the Halls of Residence in August 1969 in association with McIntyre and Associates Builders and PR Scott and Associates Consulting Engineers. Mr. Birrell also designed James Cook University's library, which was officially named the Eddie Koiki Mabo Library in 2008. In 2018, the Eddie Koiki Mabo Library was named one of Australia's top 10 iconic architectural sites by the University of Melbourne's panel of architectural experts. In 2005, Mr. Birrell received Australian Institute of Architects' highest honour, the Gold Medal, for his spirited and distinguished contribution to the discipline of architecture through his built work, through his publications, and through his service to the profession and the wider community. In light of his outstanding legacy to James Cook University, the late Mr. James Birrell will be recognised as an Honorary Doctor of Letters. James Cook University wishes to recognise Mrs. Margaret Roderick for her outstanding work in supporting Australian literature and the development and support of Australian literary studies at James Cook University. This award will be received by her nephew, Mr. Norm Smith. Together with her husband, JCU Emeritus Professor Colin Roderick, Mrs. Margaret Roderick was a central and defining figure in the development of the foundation of Australian literary studies at James Cook University, starting in 1966, and the creation of the annual Colin Roderick Literary Award, founded in 1967. One of the most prestigious and the longest-standing literary prizes in the country, Mrs. Roderick was instrumental in establishing the Colin Roderick Literary Award and organised the annual awards dinner over many years. Although Mrs. Roderick's primary degree was in science, she was always keenly interested in and highly knowledgeable about literature. In fact, Mrs. Roderick undertook much of the extensive research that underpinned the production of her late husband, Emeritus Professor Colin Roderick's numerous books on Australian literature, including major works on Henry Lawson, A.B. Patterson, Rosa Praed, and the explorer Ludwig Leichhardt. Mrs. Roderick's research during Emeritus Professor Roderick's time as James Cook University's Professor of Literature and subsequently Emeritus Professor, coupled with her other important endeavours in support of Australian literature and Australian literary studies, continue to bring distinction to James Cook University. In light of her outstanding work, Mrs. Margaret Roderick will be recognised as an Honorary Doctor of the University. James Cook University wishes to recognise the late Miss Edna Shaw for her outstanding commitment to education in Australian fine art and culture, particularly in northern Queensland. This award will be received by her niece, Ms Lauren Waters. Ms Edna Shaw had a formative and enduring influence on education in Australian fine art and culture in northern Queensland, and also excelled in the fields of nursing and education. Ms Shaw furthered her interest in the arts and completed a fine arts degree with honours at the University of Melbourne, and later an education degree. Over several decades, Ms Shaw collected an extensive library on Australian fine art and culture, including a number of rare volumes. Her library is now a feature of James Cook University's Eddie Koiki-Mabo Library Special Collections, providing scholars, students and the community with valuable assets documenting the breadth of Australian art and some international materials. Ms Shaw was a member of the Family History Association of North Queensland, the National Trust of Queensland and the Townsville Museum Incorporated. She had a strong commitment to the Australian Defence Force, working with the Melbourne Shrine of Remembrance, Legacy and the RSL, and was a researcher associated with the first lone pine specimen from Gallipoli planted in Australia. Ms Shaw's exceptional generosity and ability to excel in many fields marks her as an outstanding citizen of the community who gave selflessly to that community. In light of her outstanding commitment, the late Miss Edna Shaw will be recognised as an Honorary Doctor of Letters. Finally, James Cook University wishes to recognise the late Mr Eddie Koiki-Mabo for his outstanding service and distinguished public campaign to improve the rights and well-being of First Nations peoples, and his profound legacy through the existence of native title and land rights for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. This award will be received by his daughter, Gail Mabo. Eddie Koiki-Mabo achieved recognition for Australian Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples' rights and history, with a focus on northern Queensland, but with application across Australia and beyond. Mr Mabo devoted his life to achieving historical recognition for and improving the well-being of Australian Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. His legacy was to correct our understanding of Australian history and the circumstances of colonisation, and this legacy lives on through the existence of native title and the recognition of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples' land rights. His struggle was inextricably linked to JCU, as the university hosted an early land rights conference where the case being brought by Eddie Koiki-Mabo was considered and ultimately pursued, with the university providing access to contemporary understanding and scholarship both through academic staff and library resources, particularly during his time as a university employee, to inform his history-changing case. In 2008, the library on the university's Bebigu Yamba Townsville campus was named in honour of Eddie Koiki-Mabo, emphasising JCU's connection with Mr Mabo and his fight for just recognition. In light of his outstanding service, the late Mr Eddie Koiki-Mabo will be recognised as an Honorary Doctor of the University.
Chancellor, Vice-Chancellor, would you please join me on the stage for the conferral of all honorary awards. Chancellor, as Chair of the Academic Board, I certify to you and to the University that all honorary award recipients presented to you today have fulfilled the requirements prescribed by the University, and I ask that they be acknowledged as having been conferred to their respective honorary degrees.
In the name of the University Council and by my authority as Chancellor, I acknowledge conferral of all honorary award certificates and congratulate them warmly on their achievements.
Vice-Chancellor, I invite you to present the award recipients to the Chancellor. Chancellor, I invite you to present testimonies to all award recipients or family members representing recipients whose awards are being conferred posthumously tonight, and to recognise the awardees who are being presented with their awards in absentia.
Chancellor, it is with great pleasure that I present to you Valerie Alberts for the award of Honorary Doctor of Letters in recognition of her outstanding service and many distinguished public contributions supporting the advancement of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander communities in northern Queensland. Chancellor, it is with great pleasure I present to you Professor Tony Bassick for the award of Honorary Doctor of Science in recognition of his academic excellence and outstanding leadership in fostering, developing and delivering innovation, particularly in the fields of agriculture, food and complex carbohydrate biotechnology at national and international levels. Chancellor, it is with great pleasure I present to you Laurie Bragg for the award of Honorary Doctor of Letters in recognition of his significant contribution to scholarship and education, in particular the history of relations between Australia and Papua New Guinea. Chancellor, it is with great pleasure I present to you Commissioner Katerina Carroll APM for the award of Honorary Doctor of Letters for her exceptional leadership and professionalism in a number of key roles within the Queensland public sector and Queensland community. Chancellor, it is with great pleasure I present to you Emeritus Professor Peter Caldrake AO for the award of Honorary Doctor of the University in recognition of his exceptional and distinguished public contribution through his lifetime of work, advocacy, research and advancement of higher education in Australia. Chancellor, it is with great pleasure I present to you Sean Dorney, MBE, AM, for the award of Honorary Doctor of Letters in recognition of his outstanding contribution to the reporting of foreign affairs to Australia and his advocacy for Pacific nations, particularly Papua New Guinea. That would have been a heart attack right there. Chancellor, It is with great pleasure I present to you Graham Jackson, OAM, for the award of Honorary Doctor of Commerce in recognition of his outstanding contribution to business and commerce and his enduring public contributions to community culture and sporting organisations in Townsville and North Queensland. Chancellor. Chancellor, it is with great pleasure I present to you Dennis Lennox for the award of Honorary Doctor of Medicine in recognition of his significant contribution to medicine and health education, training and service delivery in Northern Queensland and beyond. Chancellor, it is with great pleasure I present to you Bill Mitchell, OAM, for the award of Honorary Doctor of Laws in recognition of his significant contribution to human rights law and his commitment to the community of Northern Queensland. Chancellor, it is with great pleasure I present to you Daryl Merger for the award of Honorary Doctor of Letters in recognition of his outstanding contributions to the documentation of cultural heritage in far north Queensland, education in cultural heritage and the establishment of Indigenous enterprises. Chancellor, it is my pleasure to present to you Professor Dennis Passion for the award of Honorary Doctor of Medicine in recognition of his exceptional contribution to advancing rural and remote health in Australia. Chancellor, it is with great pleasure I present to you Dr. Len Rutledge for the award of Honorary Doctor of Letters in recognition of his significant contributions to the tourism industry as a pioneering and internationally respected travel writer and publisher. Chancellor, it is with great pleasure I present to you Bernard Singleton for the award of Honorary Doctor of Letters in recognition of his outstanding service and distinguished public contribution to the Northern Queensland community, particularly in the fields of health, archaeology and anthropology. Chancellor, it is with great pleasure I present to you Victor Stephenson for the award of Honorary Doctor of Science for his outstanding public contribution to the field of science in the Northern Queensland community, Australia and abroad, by virtue of his knowledge, mentoring and teaching of conservation and natural resource management and ecology, particularly through cultural burning practices. Chancellor, it is with great pleasure I present to you Judith Trevin Hawke for the award of Honorary Doctor of Science in recognition of her significant contribution to enhancing the capacity and capability of the allied health workforce, particularly occupational therapy in northern Queensland. Chancellor, it is with great pleasure that I present to you Professor Ian Young, AO, for the award of Honorary Doctor of Engineering, honoris causa, in recognition of his outstanding scholarship as a researcher and engineer, and for his pioneering leadership roles in online teaching and research in higher education. Chancellor, Her Excellency Dr. Gillian Bird, PSM, has made an exceptional contribution to international relations, in particular her outstanding advocacy for recognition by the United Nations of the International Day of the Tropics that has made the difference on the world stage. Her Excellency cannot be with us tonight, but I ask that you recognise Gillian Bird in absentia as an Honorary Doctor of the University. Chancellor Dr. Richard Harris, SCOAM, is globally recognised for his expertise and commitment to aeromedical and emergency retrieval and has provided outstanding service in these areas in Australia and abroad. Dr. Harris cannot be with us tonight, and I ask that you recognise Dr. Richard Harris in absentia as an Honorary Doctor of Medicine. Chancellor Dr. Peter Eisdale, AM, has made a significant contribution to reef science and provided outstanding leadership in the effective commercialisation of science in Australia. Dr. Eisdale cannot be here this evening, and I ask that you recognise Dr. Peter Eisdale as an Honorary Doctor of Science. Chancellor Emeritus Professor David Yellowlees has made an exceptional contribution to James Cook University, Northern Queensland and well beyond as an outstanding researcher, teacher and mentor to many. Emeritus Professor Yellowlees cannot be with us this evening, but I ask that you recognise Emeritus Professor David Yellowlees in absentia as an Honorary Doctor of Science. Chancellor, the late James Birrell has left an outstanding legacy at James Cook University. He developed the University for Northern Queensland Master Plan, assisted with choosing the site for the proposed campus, and provided the architectural design of significant buildings, including the Eddie Koiki-Mabo Library, the Kenback Chancellery Building, and the University Halls of Residence. Chancellor, I present James Birrell Jr. to accept the award of Honorary Doctor of Letters on behalf of his father, James Birrell. Chancellor, the late Margaret Roderick was a passionate and discerning supporter of both Australian literature and Australian literary studies at James Cook University. Her involvement over decades directly and through the Foundation for Australian Literary Studies was outstanding and made a significant difference to these endeavours. Chancellor, I present Mr. Norm Smith to accept the award of Honorary Doctor of the University on behalf of his aunt, Margaret Roderick. Chancellor, the late Edna Shaw had a formative and enduring influence on education in Australian fine art and culture. She amassed a significant collection over her lifetime and generously ensured that scholars would have enduring access to these special materials. Edna Shaw excelled in the fields of nursing and education, making major contributions to local and national communities and organisations. Chancellor, I present Lauren Waters to accept the award of Honorary Doctor of Letters on behalf of her aunt, Edna Shaw. Chancellor, the late Eddie Koiki-Mabo has left an historic legacy with profound impact on Australia, Queensland and the university. Throughout his life, he was focused on improving the well-being of Australian Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. His major achievement emerged from his personal struggle for land rights, a struggle that resulted in the development of native title legislation in Australia, delivering land rights for Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples with ramifications for First Nations peoples worldwide. Chancellor, I present Gail Mabo to accept the award of Honorary Doctor of the University on behalf of her father, Eddie Koiki-Mabo.
Thank you, Vice-Chancellor. And now I have the pleasure of inviting the Vice-Chancellor and President, Professor Sandra Harding, AO, to deliver the closing address.
Chancellor, Honorary Doctors, distinguished guests, JCU outstanding alumni, colleagues, friends all. 11 years ago, almost to the day, and by that I mean on the 20th of April 2010, I delivered the closing remarks at a gala event on campus to celebrate JCU's 40th birthday. Some of you here this evening were there, including our Chancellor, who, still in the thick of his outstanding diplomatic career, was the recipient of a JCU Outstanding Alumni Award that night. On that occasion, we had the privilege of hosting JCU's first Vice-Chancellor, now the late Emeritus Professor Ken Back, as well as former Vice-Chancellors Emeritus Professor Ken McKinnon and my immediate predecessor, Emeritus Professor Bernard Malden. The only other two who had the privilege of serving as Vice-Chancellor for our university could not attend: Professor Martin Forrest, as he was living and working abroad, and the now late Professor Ray Golding, whose health meant he couldn't stray far from his home on the Sunshine Coast. It was a spectacular night. We looked back on so many achievements over 50 years in higher education and 40 years as a university. Stories were told about the dogged pursuit of a university by the Townsville community, and when the time came, by the Cairns community too. We celebrated the achievements of those without whom the university simply would not be, and marvelled at the contributions made by all those who had gone before. It was their efforts that saw the realisation of the dream of higher education and research, and all that has meant right here in the north. That night, we reflected on the tropics as our place and northern Queensland as our heartland. We launched an independent history of JCU titled Our Place in the Sun, authored by Dr. Peter Bell. And we looked forward to the journey ahead, secure in the knowledge that our place, the tropics, was becoming more important, not less. In the time since our 40th celebration in 2010, that knowledge about the importance of the tropics has been crystallised and promulgated through the work of very many at James Cook University and through our leadership of the State of the Tropics project, resulting in the delivery of 2 landmark reports investigating environmental, economic and social factors with a view to answering a very simple question: is life in the tropics getting better? Nobel laureate Aung San Suu Kyi was sufficiently persuaded of the importance of this work to launch the inaugural report on the 29th of June 2014, with the follow-up major report delivered on the same date last year. It turns out that the tropical zone of the world accounts for more than 40% of the world's people, 55% of the world's children, and around 80% of the world's biodiversity. These reports, plus 2 thematic reports, one on sustainable infrastructure development and the other on health, these reports demonstrate that there are great challenges as well as great opportunities confronting the tropics. And because of the weight of the tropics' demography and the impacts of climate change, these challenges and opportunities have ramifications for the rest of the world too. So much so that our university in this work was recognised by the United Nations in 2016 when the General Assembly voted without dissent to recognise the 29th of June as the UN International Day of the Tropics to commemorate the launch by Aung San Suu Kyi of that first State of the Tropics report on that date 2 years earlier. As you heard, Her Excellency, Dr. Gillian Bird, recognised here this evening, was instrumental to that achievement. A lot has happened across the broad sweep of JCU history, and particularly over the last 10 years. And here we are, together this evening, on the last night of JCU's 50th year. Fittingly, tonight, we have launched our 50th anniversary book, skillfully and beautifully produced by Tricia Fielding, providing insights into some very special moments from the last 60 years in higher education and 50 years as a university. Thanks, Tricia, for your outstanding work, and to you, Vanessa, too, for your role, and to both of you for your remarks tonight. But most of all, tonight has been devoted to highlighting the extraordinary achievements of an extraordinary group of people, now honorary doctors of our university. Somehow this feels right. One of the things that I like best about our university is that we understand and honour the power of our place, and we are gripped by our responsibility to the peoples of the North and to the tropics more broadly. Sociologists have a term for our approach. We are other-regarding. Our purpose is not to serve ourselves, but to serve others. Our statement of strategic intent, JCU's version of a mission and vision statement, says it all. We are about creating a brighter future for life in the tropics through graduates and discoveries that make a difference. Ours is a weighty responsibility to work with and for the peoples and places of the North and the tropics, but this is not a responsibility that we shoulder alone. Indeed, we are determined to recognise the contributions of others. We look for the heroes in our communities who themselves have created such a difference by their personal example, with impact on the community and human well-being, whose efforts inspire us all. How fortunate we are tonight to have heard of the extraordinary lives lived in the service of knowledge and in the service of others. And the golden thread that runs through all these stories is one of place. These people we celebrate tonight are of this place in every way that matters. Some of you, our esteemed honorary doctors, are from here and took your talent, insight, expertise and humanity to the world. The power of your example shouldn't be underestimated. It inspires and enables local youth and community members, and it affirms their right to be powerful too. Some of you came from somewhere else, but have devoted yourself to serving others here in the North or across the tropics and beyond through the work you do that has such power and purchase in communities that we care so much about. The power of your example can't be overestimated. You are the reason that others, both local and from outside of the region, can be inspired to focus on the critical issues of the North, even though you were not born or bound here. This place matters to you, and that matters to us. And so we reflect again on the tropics as our place, and Northern Queensland as our heartland, a heartland that is inexorably and powerfully linked to the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples whose traditional home is also our home. Tonight, we recognise once again Eddie Koiki Mabo, for whom our library is named on our Bebegoo Yumba campus here in Townsville. As of late 2020, our northern campuses and study centres also carry names gifted to us by local Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples. Whether it is Eddie Koiki Mabo's history-changing legacy, or through the truly outstanding work of a number of our honorary doctors here tonight, we again recognise traditional knowledge, honouring and valuing what it has to teach us all. These actions give simple expression to our university's determination to embrace the deep meaning of our place, recognising its peoples and what has been authentically and powerfully here in our tropics for 60,000 years. And so we look back. It is good and right to do so. And we recognise people and place and so many achievements across the life's course of our university. Now, as our 50th anniversary year draws to an end, it is time to look forward to the next era for JCU, to the next set of achievements, and to the people who will create them. Congratulations to our inspiring 2020 honorary doctors. You embody so much of what is good and important in this world. Ladies and gentlemen, friends and colleagues, thank you for joining us. Your presence has ensured that this night is another historic moment for our university and our community. Thank you and good evening.
Thank you, Vice-Chancellor, for those celebratory closing address. The success of this ceremony is the culmination of effort of many university staff. I would like to thank all of the event staff, university ceremony staff, marketing staff, and management for their work on this event. I invite all Honorary Award recipients and family members representing posthumous awards to the front for a group photo. A professional photographer will be available to take photos of the award recipients and their families and friends after the group photo. Please remember to observe the COVID-safe distancing. I would also address... Well, we must. Could be a long time before we get the jab. I also direct the attention of the attendees of this auspicious event to sign the James Cook University guest book. That same book signed by Queen Elizabeth in 1970, which is located near the door. The special honorary award ceremony is now concluded. Thank you and enjoy the rest of the evening.